Hello everybody, welcome back to Art Tips. It's Art Tips time. Art Tips. Brain Gamer, first one up. Brain Gamer's first in the chat room. Joining me tonight to talk about a little bit Art Tips is Brandon Mega Potato James. Hello.
Hello.
First cast of 2017 for you, huh? Because you were busy.
Happy to be here.
You were busy last night.
I was busy coughing up
Yeah.
grossness.
Sure. All right, so what are we doing? We got a fan question here. This comes from a regular. I'll read it back to you. This is from Will. Will F. Hey Rob, Happy New Year. Had a question for you about an interior. I have a roughly mocked up interior. I'm just not sure about how to work out the perspective and foreshortening to make the scene dramatic and believable. It's an interior sci-fi train which is about to be overrun by vicious creatures, and our heroes are investigating. So this is his shot. His art, not mine. Well, let's see. Let's take it into Photoshop. So, whether this is a scene for a comic book or a pinup or cover, it's kind of irrelevant. There's two kinds of pictures for me, right, Brandon? One is one that tells a story, and the other is one that looks cool. And if you can do both, great, right? Case in point, there are storytelling panels in comics that really shouldn't be blown up on your TV and made a big deal out of because they're storytelling panels, right? And then you get these panels sometimes that are just Batman jumping off a roof, and it doesn't really matter what story that's in. It's just this big pinup thing. I think about covers the same way. And every now and then you got to do a cover that's more of a storytelling bit versus a pinup bit, right? So I assume in this is a bit more of a storytelling bit, right? They're investigating. They want it to look, I don't know, ominous somehow.
Right.
And what he's done is sort of mocked up an interior train, a little kit bashing here, kind of places characters around. And I can already say, if we just look at this, first off, folks, if you're going to do even a cover, right, let's just pretend this is a piece of cover art, right? This is something that's going to go through an approval process. You're always going to want to give them 2 or 3 options anyway. So whatever I do here in a minute really isn't dependent upon this being a storytelling panel. Just think about, anytime you do a cover or a pinup or a commission, or, well, not really a commission, but yeah, something where we want to give them 1 or 2 options, no matter what. What I would do first is let's make some new layers and quickly shovel in some white here and just crank down the opacity and just think for a second about perspective, right? Basic perspective. As it looks now, this is a 1-point perspective drawing in which it's sort of coming out like this. It's a bit on a curve, right? It's kind of both. And being that it's 1 point, the frame in of itself, how it's working, isn't really obeying some of those rules at this point. Like if we take the line tool and just quickly make these lines a little bigger than I normally would so you can sort of see them. You can kind of see the roof line should be up here as it recedes. Even if this were curving into perspective, like if you're doing a little bit more of a dynamic kind of like anime style shot, it would still curve up this way. So the volume, the area in which this scene is taking place in, could use some fundamental structure. You gotta figure out how far these corners go. The volume could use some work before we. And this, you got to figure out, is it curving this? How is it curving? Is it curving down? Is it curving up? If you're going to do some curvilinear perspective, it can bend a little more this way. This is what you call the Cinerama dome. Cinerama kind of. It's not really realistic. And then you can come over here and build a roof. So forth. So you got some structural issues just in terms of this layout before we even try to do anything to it. And I think that alone, look, all this kit bashing here where you throw in little pieces to kind of add detail doesn't solve an inherent perspective problem. And if you look at this kit bashing, this actually isn't in line with the way.
Could you, if they wanted to do kit bashing, could you use the warp tool to warp
Well,
it?
yeah, I mean, you got to first get these grids. This is why I grid things out, right?
Uh-huh.
So I can see where the surface is going to hit. Where is the surface in which this stuff goes on? And then, you can warp one of these into and then add a little bit of perspective underneath, just by filling in a little bit of black and kind of working. But you'd see underneath this stuff. And then as it came up, it would get thicker as it gets closer to the camera. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And that right there automatically adds a lot more dynamics to what you got going on. What's happening is he's throwing in a perspective shot, and then because the kit bashing is being used to repeat objects to add sci-fi detail, sci-fi detail.
Right.
It's just it's like this, and he's trying to space them out, but it ends up being this closed. And you end up with this closed, ever-growing box that doesn't actually adhere to any. It's like the opposite of dynamic.
Gotcha. Now, this is probably not the best question to ask, but I'll ask it since, obviously I'm learning all this too. Would bringing in the character who's in the forefront closer in instead of so far to the out?
Look,
well,
hold on. We're talking about middle. That's another conversation. Just let me talk about the volume first, because volume is everything. When you're placing a storytelling setting, and you got to be very careful. I just don't think that would curve that way. I'd have to work. It's this whole shot's weird. The way I sort of see it in my head is the train traveling around a curve? If we're looking overhead on the train tracks, independent of this shot, is it going around a curve? Is it going straight? What's going on back here? Because all I see back here is Photoshop mountains. Now, I don't know why you need to Photoshop a bunch of mountains back there that look like this, because I can do that. Don't become so reliant. Will, if you're listening out there, don't become so reliant on kit bashing that you're forgetting fundamental construction. You don't need to have, this background, you easily, you could just sketch in some mountains. How hard is that?
Kind of like when people use SketchUp for their building backgrounds and they're all just straight up and there's no
It could be like anything, or like when you throw a bunch of photos of milky ass low res mountains and you could just sketch some. How about that? There's an example. Don't detour, Brandon. You know what I mean? You got to be careful.
Sorry.
Now the other thing you got to think about is how wide is this train? Because last time I was in a train, this is giant. Is it 2 rows of seats this way? So technically the walls would be tighter in. So they're going down the middle of it, or is this is the layout where there's a row in the center and an aisle and then seats and an aisle? Is it like that? What is this interior, layout? So is he in the middle aisle here? And then are you going to be able to mirror that? That's a big question. But if I'm just assuming that he's kind of just making us all up and doesn't really know yet, which is more than likely, you do have a problem where you have a character who's way over here, empty space, character over here, empty space, character over here. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I was going to go and light this, it's like, who's the focal point? Is this guy in the... Like, imagine if the lighting was just being lit by these windows. And then he's like, got like the little rim light on him. And then you could have like something happen. You could paint the pool of light. Son of a bitch. Sometimes I hit the Z tool, so the B. And then you can use wherever the light hits to like dictate, where. Yeah, I'll zoom out, Brandon. You'll see.
Right, I got it.
Sometimes I hit the Z tool, so the B. So that's more of a lighting issue rather than a perspective or how to draw situation, Like how moody is the interior going to be? Like that changes, look at that, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Is it like Jabba's barge in Return of the Jedi where it's all dark inside? Like maybe it should be if it's going to be a more ominous setting. Also, from a color standpoint, you can get into... This is very difficult, folks. This is very little to do with straight illustration, right? Especially when you're going to full color. Because when you're going to full color, like I almost feel like these should be designed at this size. In movies, they call these color keys or color scripts. They do everything at a very small level. And you color script out these little thumbnails the whole movie. I think if you look up color scripting, you might, I think even Ty Carrell, I can't remember his name, he did a Gumroad on color scripting, which is okay. It's a discussion. But this is more of a mood issue. So, I don't know. There's a lot of things here, Brandon. Like I look at it and I'm like, wow, before we even get into drawing, you could very easily get into like what's the color mood for this,
Mm-hmm.
Like look, if I throw in and invert this color map, this gradient map here, like that changes everything. I'll wait for it to catch up to
Oh yeah.
That's
almost like everything's gone dark and just the emergency lights are on kind of feel.
Right. So I don't, I gotta, I almost feel the concept should be figured out color-wise first at this stage. And then the details and how to work out, like he's getting way into the design of this train here and all these seats and multiplying things before you work out the fundamentals of the shot, And you got to be very careful of that. With computers, it's super easy to do, man. It's like, when Lucas started putting a bunch of CG shit in a scene that's just two guys talking. You don't need all that shit going on. It's just two guys talking. Why don't you just make the conversation between the two guys really interesting? So, like, if I zoom out and just basically, you can do one point in a lot of different ways. You can, tilt you can angularize. Is that a word?
Sure.
You can curve some of these walls. So I'm going to draw them vertically where you want to make certain, though, you're not doing too much of this, where you're bowing one way and bowing out the other. That stuff can look weird. What's beeping? Just being Photoshop, just being stupid. And even this can be right up to the edge of the train. In that case, kind of like stretch out the shot a little bit. And then you can use people. I like to kind of like sometimes sketch out the little silhouettes where I'm going to put them. They don't have to be figured out per character. You can figure out in stick figure. Like you can put a character. It's probably too far away. Like he had 1, 2, and 3, right? So he could have this guy. Maybe he's even closer up. Right? So we can see where his face would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can work out another guy. Sometimes I just like to blob shit. And then the third guy back here. And then you got to work out like some of the proportions.
But it's still cool to. It's a good way to like the way you're doing it right now with the blobs because you can move stuff and figure things out without having to spend all the time doing all the details. And a lot of people go straight to detailing their characters and not so much the concepting.
Yeah, this is why I do a lot of my not just myself, but a lot of storyboard people, they'll actually just start with stick figures on Post-its. Because blocking in those things doesn't really require, this way you're kind of narrowing tension. That's how I see it. Like you put that main guy who's the focal point there,
Right.
and you're narrowing tension towards the vanishing point. And then you get into shit like, color and
Lighting.
yeah, and just try not to forget, folks, foreground, middle ground, background, Sometimes Photoshop just fucking doesn't want to work the way you want it to. And just working in 5 values, like I tend to work in this. In my grayscale, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. White, light gray, mid gray, and then all the way to black. So you can start to build in key light sources. Maybe this is like highlighting his eyes, right? Very vignette-y, very noir. Maybe that's only enough light on him to pop out. He's got a gun or something. This guy would be completely in black. Yeah, so the first shot, Shifty Eddie makes a point. The first shot tends to focus on the environment. And I tend to think like that's a case of I can multiply a bunch of objects in Photoshop and create this big environment, and then I'll shove a scene in there. That is the prequels. That is episodes 1 through 3. Don't do that. Don't shove a bunch of shit in your environment and then work a story around it. What you want to do is very quickly set up, location, environment. So it just got a box of volume, right? And you want the tension, the emotion of the scene to be the focus. What is the emotion of the scene? Is it happy? Is it joyful? Is
Fear.
It fear, right? Is it suspension? It's something's about to happen.
Right.
And then you can block in the characters using stick figures and then color guide your stuff pretty quickly. The gradient maps are an awesome tool for that because you can quickly try multiple color schemes just based on just based on the tonal values underneath. Now they're in a red light district. So, you any questions about this, Brandon? Am I helping at all? Is any of this? Am I making?
You are. I mean, you explained to him real well that you don't. What I take from this is you don't need to spend a lot of time kit bashing. You can use it as a starting point to just kind of feel where you want to place things, and then go.
I would not use kit bashing as a starting point. What I would be is figure out everything structurally, thumbnail wise, right? Very basic construction.
Well, I didn't mean drawing off. I meant like what if you can't envision like me. Let's say I can't envision what a futuristic train would look like. I could use a picture of a futuristic train to look at
Yeah,
a
but
starting
that's something you do after you already figure out what about
point.
this involves this features to train. What about this involves the details of needing to know what that is?
Just the ceiling.
Absolutely nothing. It's a fucking box. Like you know you're
Yeah.
inside something. Let me explain this to you, right? Like, let me make
All
this
right.
very clear, in case I haven't already, Brandon. Right?
Yes.
So, if we're going to design a shot that takes place outside, right?
Uh-huh.
That means we're going to see the outsides of boxes when we're outside. Right? There's me looking at the outside of a building, right? And if these
Mm-hmm.
buildings keep coming into, we do a giant mega city, we see more outsides of boxes. That exterior shots are outside of boxes. Interior shots are inside of boxes. This is very, very simple, right? Now,
Yes.
we're inside. Oh, wow, look at that.
See, why'd
Hey,
you say that at the
everybody.
beginning?
Yay. Yay. Because we're doing a live, Brandon, right? Right? And all you need to do is compose your basic frames where you're inside a box or you're outside a box. And I know it seems ridiculously simple to say that, but that's all it is, you
Yeah.
know? And if you spend all your time trying to kit bash this environment before you figured out the emotional sense of it, you figured out what you even need. Like, if I know I got 3 guys in here in a box this big, right? Like, let's say is going to be a big, let's just block in a big dude will be here, and a fucking banana head guy. Mr. Banana Head's gonna be over here. That's gonna take up or Jay Leno or Chili Pepper Head, whatever his name is, Chili Pepper Man, right? And little dude's back here. Then I know I have. This guy's got a sword, right? See, now we're concepting, right? It's kind of mohawk. Yeah. Someday, Brad, I don't have to draw this comic. He'd be like, really? I'm like, yeah, that's what I assigned you have to do. And the ET's back here. Hey, guys, you're only going to need so many seats when you get around to actually building the set out and go, okay, the next phase is to fill that, the next phase is to figure out the color so I know the tone. But then when I know how much detail I need or I know where the mood is, then I can go, okay, how many seats are going to be in here? You know what I mean? How big is this volume? And I could take a side piece of paper, and sketch that out very quickly using nothing more than just markers. It's going to be one row in the center with 2 seats, so forth and so forth. But you're starting with those details at the very beginning, and that level of design is now dictating the emotionality of the shot, right? Like, look
Mm-hmm.
about how much effort this has been put into this guy, and you're not even going to see him, you know?
Yeah. I
And you
get it
could
now.
tell me, well, Rob, this page might go across 2 pages on a big book. No one's going to care. I'm just like, I've had to learn this my own, when the minute you start becoming a storyteller, the amount of details you can put into a scene are almost irrelevant. There are as many details as need to be put into a scene. So one of the mistakes the 90s taught us is that people can overdraw books for no reason,
Right.
right? You could put a lot of effort into something and go, floop, done with that. You're like, what? Like, that being said, you could also draw a lot of stuff on a dialogue heavy page, and then that detail competes with the emotionality of the scene. So, and if you don't have enough detailed pieces, then you don't have a wow factor, right? You do want some wow factor. So you want to put, your wow factor where, you got your money shots, and then you got your B level storytelling stuff, and then you got your silhouette panels, which just eats up. That helps you. Storytelling silhouettes are really great for moving things. That's a whole other conversation. And so this needs more emotion and basic character composition. And if he's still wondering, well, Rob, what are other ways I can do it? I would just say, really got to play with the placement of the horizon line. If it's low angle looking up, that's dramatic, right? You can be over by the feet, and then you got another guy over here, and then one guy way down there. Now that everyone's super broken up there. That's a lot of depth. I don't think there's enough depth in the train for that. You know, you could do This comes back to basic perspective, right? Like, so this is the same, like 1 point, only this time, you know, it can be looking down into the frame, where this is a little more complicated, right? This is more of a placement frame if you were to do something like that.
What's the name of the artist? What's his name?
Will.
Okay. Well, you got options. You definitely got some options of different ways you could go about this.
You know, and this is what I play with all the time. Like, I'm always thinking of everything from this very basic, you know, point up until the point where you can't anymore. You're like, okay, you know, it's kind of pointless. I personally feel, you know, trying to connect with the characters are more important than showing me how many seats are in a train. You know?
Right.
So I would rather see more, like if I just took this basic same shot and took this guy, let's cut him out, and then we'll end it on this. We'll take this guy, cut him out, and take this and cut him out, right? And then, like, you blow this character up. This guy you make a little bigger and you move him tighter in. Let me take that, fill it with white so we can kind of see them a little. And then this guy, then what you're doing is you're ping-ponging 1, 2, 3 into, and it's lining up with the viewpoint of the perspective. See?
All right.
And I think that overall solves a lot of the basic structural issues with that layout. Then you can always have this guy, like, you know, he's got the skeptical house look. Skeptical lizard, where he's like, And he's like, he's got those. So, basic composition. Any questions, Brandon?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. After the, I was a little, like, I wouldn't say lost, but I still was uncertain. But once you did the outside-inside box, as simple as it was kind of, it was usually the simpler shit, you know, just works. So once you said outside-inside, I was like, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Always
sense.
keep it very simple. Outside, inside. Inside a box, outside a box. Once they're in a box, where are they going to be placed? And they're going to be placed based on?
Perspective.
Yes, but based on the storytelling. What needs
Oh.
to occur, right? What they're drawing focus to. It's very simple. What are they looking at? You know? What is the point? So, we're going to go out tonight, Brandon, and draw a whole comic book, right?
Yep.
Using everything I just said. And please, folks, please, this sort of thing, right? Knowing when you're looking underneath an object can help punch up your perspective big time. Right? Like that right there. Don't need a computer. Basic construction. Anyone in the chat room have any questions? We all good?
No, people just saying hi.
Give it 1 second. 1. All right, everybody, that's it. So I'm going to be back on a little bit. We're going to be doing some Final Fantasy drawing, and we can do all sorts of fun perspective and construction there. Will, I hope that helped out. If not, feel free to ask some follow-up questions, and we'll continue this on forward. This will be up live tomorrow. I'm working out, see, today's technically Tuesday, but in my mind it's Monday. So I'm working that out. But the goal is to have things up Tuesdays and Thursdays during the middle of the day, so I can sort of space everything out so people aren't getting filled with 50 fucking updates. All right, everybody. See y'all in a few. Peace. Say goodbye, Brandon.
Bye-bye.